Hello guys, thank you for stopping by. Today I wanted to share with you how to draw realistic eyes in watercolors. If you have not watched the first part of the video when I draw those eyes that you see above, then I will leave a link to it in the description bar below. Today I want to show you how to make a more complex drawing and achieve this softness and smooth transitions when drawing the skin. For today's watercolor sketch, I will use this photo, but only as a reference because I want to change the color of the eyes and the skin tone a little bit. To begin with, as always, I wet the paper with a wet brush and then apply the base layer of my favorite colors, mix of burnt umber and violet rose. Make sure the layer is thin. And while the paper is still wet, I apply the same shade but with a thicker layer. Then, with a slightly wet clean brush, I spread the paint, removing excess. Well, this process requires a little practice, but it is worth trying a couple of times, and I promise everything will work out. Now we need to wait for the layer to dry, so let's move on to the whites of the eyes. As I always say, they are not completely white, so you cannot just leave white paper untouched. The eyelids and eyelashes create a shadow and make it quite dark. My favorite color for whites is indigo. It's something between dark blue and black, which makes it perfect. We put a thin layer on the whites and darken the place under the eyelids where the shadow falls. The paper has already dried out a bit, so we can move on to the next layer and make more active shadows under the eyebrows. Also, on the eyelids, I decided to apply a slightly pinkish color to make it look like makeup, and it will help to emphasize the pallor of the skin. As you can see, I always soften the sharp edges of the paint with a slightly wet, clean brush. If there is too much water on the brush, I pat it with a paper towel. I as well mixed green and burnt umber and applied it to the shadow near the nose and slightly under the eyes, since our skin tone is quite complex and has many colors. This will also help to emphasize the pallor of the skin. It's time to draw thinner lines and shadows. And do not forget to draw the inner corners of the eyes and highlight the lower eyelid and the waterline that separates the eye whites from the eyelash growth line. You know, when watercolors dries, it tends to fade, so do not worry if you think that you put too bright a color on the paper. And anyways, after some time you will have to apply more layers of the paint so that the color is more saturated and darker. Although the juiciness of the paint will depend on the manufacturer and the quality of the paper that you are using, so it is better to test both of it in advance. If I want to achieve soft lines and smooth skin in watercolor, I put a fairly thin layer of the paint. Firstly, it will help to avoid mistakes, and as you know, watercolor is quite difficult to remove from the paper later. And secondly, such a multi-layering creates a realistic effect if you paint portraits. So it is time to draw the irises. I want to make eyes brown-green colored. And for this, firstly I mix rose sienna and burnt umber, and this will be our base layer. Then I add pure burnt umber around the edges, leaving the center bright. And then on top I added green color and spread it with the thinnest brush to create the effect of stripes coming from the pupil to the edges. Let it dry a bit and let's move on to the eyebrows. I want to achieve the most natural looking eyebrows, naughty, fluffy and growing in different directions without a lot of makeup. The girl in the photo has rather thick eyebrows, so I tend to draw each and every hair, which was fun. Try to make light brush movements moving from the root upwards so the tip of the hair is thinner. For the first layer I mixed burnt umber, ivory black and a bit of purple to give the color a cool shade. I do not want the eyebrows to be too bright or saturated, so I choose more matted shade of colors. Also, As you've probably already noticed, the light falls on the right side of the face, so the left side is more darkened. This applies to the shadows around the eyes, nose and eyebrows. Returning to the eyes, I walk around the edges in a more saturated shade, mixed from green and umber. And then I mix ivory black and indigo to achieve an almost black color, but not quite, so the pupils of the eyes and the shadows in the upper part of the iris will look more natural. And finally go to the eyelashes, my favorite part, cause come on girls, we all know how much eyelashes matter. With the same color that we used for the eyebrows, I draw the first layer of lashes, and after that we will cover it with a darker color. So this layering is optional of course, but the eyelashes themselves are quite thin and light, and only the mascara makes them reach black. We will do the same with the drawing. First draw native lashes, then cover them with a watercolor mascara for greater realism. If we wanted to achieve the most natural look, we could finish here with the natural brows and lashes, but I decided to apply a darker shade with the same thin brush, trying to go through the same hair as on the first layer. Nice tip for you guys, always keep a photo reference in front of you that you can always have a good example of how to draw a particular part. In our case, we can see how naturally the hairs of the eyebrows will lie, or in which direction the eyelashes are directed. For the freckles, I'm using the same shade of paint that we used for the basic skin tone. First, I add small spots on the nose, on the cheeks and a little above the eyebrows, and then blend them with a clean, slightly wet brush. I add a bit red shade of the second layer to emphasize freckles in some places. Well, and of course the final touch, highlights. I use my favorite white pen and adding highlights on the upper eyelid between the lashes, on the whites, and on the lower eyelid again between the lashes. That is all! And now let's see what colors we used for this painting. I used watercolors from a Russian company, and the names of the colors may be different, depends on the company as well, so I will make a coloring for you on paper and write down every color. Well, if you enjoyed this video, please support it with your likes and comments, and please subscribe to my channel. Your feedback is truly very inspiring to me. Thank you for being with me today, and I see you in the next video. Bye bye!